Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. We have some more exciting news out of the transfer portal for the second night in the row for the USC Trojans fans, as Kamari Ramsey has officially made his commitment to USC, rejoining his former defensive coordinator at UCLA in D'Anton Lynn. And that's kind of where it starts to me. It's you're getting a guy who's extremely familiar with what D'Anton Lynn wants to do as he tries to engineer a similar turnaround to this USC program's defense that he did at UCLA, but also a guy that D'Anton Lynn clearly believes in. And if D'Anton Lynn believes in him, I believe in him. And that's mostly because I just believe in D'Anton Lynn. I thought what he did, unbelievable job at UCLA. And I think he's a huge get. As you guys know, we've talked about D'Anton Lynn quite a bit here. Very excited to see what he can do. Before we get too deep into the prospect that is Kamari Ramsey, I just wanted to thank everyone for all the support, especially the USC Trojans fans. The amount of likes, the amount of comments, the amount of interaction, all that stuff really does mean the world. So again, if you guys like the content, please consider subscribing. But more importantly, drop your thoughts in the comments below. We love interacting with everybody. We like hearing everyone's thoughts, getting to learn more about these programs and where the fan bases are at in terms of what they think about the future. So again, please consider doing any of that if you have any thoughts or like the content, because it really does help us out in a big way. But just quickly getting into who Kamari Ramsey is. I mean, a guy who he almost might as well be a high school player. He's got 3 years of eligibility left, but is pretty seasoned for that sort of remaining eligibility, if you will, because he did play pretty much a full year as that starting safety for the UCLA Bruins and had a fairly productive season. I mean, had about 40 tackles, 27 of those as solo tackles, and then had a pick and 4 pass defenses. So a guy who has played a lot of football, played at a high level, and kind of has some of the traits I think you're looking for USC as they look to build their defense into a unit that gives up fewer explosive plays and frankly tackles a lot better. That was one of the things that jumps out for Kamari Ramsey. He really doesn't miss a ton of tackles. And then getting more into what the scheme is for USC as a whole, I think the big thing you got to hope you do a little bit better is limit those big explosive plays through the air. I mean, you look at what USC did last year. They were 90th in pass yards per attempt. That means they're giving up a lot of big plays, and those kill you as a defense because it's really hard to get stops if you give up touchdowns like bang right off the bat. And UCLA, on the other hand, was 23rd in that category. So again, playing a very similar schedule. But with what D'Anton Lynn was able to do, he was able to make that UCLA defense far more competitive. The only real game where I'd say they had some brutal breakdowns in that pass defense world was the Oregon State game. And that got away from them a little bit. A lot of turnovers for the UCLA offense. But other than that, you look at USC. I know USC put up some yards on them through the air, but only scored 20 points. You saw some turnovers. And you really did do a pretty good job of limiting that USC very explosive offense to giving up some big plays. I know Brendan Rice caught a big play, but frankly, that's just that was what USC had a little bit in their pocket last year with Caleb Williams, is that ability to make that one-time unbelievable play. So that's not like a coverage bust. That's not something you look at, man, that's not well-coached defense. That's just that. USC was really good on offense last year. Brendan Rice was a really good receiver. Caleb Williams, obviously one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen. So I just get into that. I think that's the sort of turnaround that A, D'Anton Lynn needs to execute, but B, Kamari Ramsey as one of those key cogs in that back end, especially at that safety spot, was pretty capable of limiting that type of play. Again, thought he had good eyes. It looked like he was able to take away certain routes and certain plays that could go for a lot of yards. And again, those things that we think really kill you on defense. And if you kind of exclude that Oregon State game, had a really, really good year in terms of looking fundamentally sound, being in the right position, in making a lot of plays. So that essentially is what I'm looking for this USC defense. I'm looking for better tackling. Kamari Ramsey is really good with that, and better positional awareness and the ability to not look like you're in the wrong spot on the field and allow those coverage busts where it looks like you're playing with 9 or 10 guys on the field, which I think got USC into trouble far too often. There's a lot of space in the field, a lot of confusion. And I think you're looking for that second safety. I know Kalen Bullock played pretty good football at his time at USC. I frankly wouldn't be so stunned if he came back and wanted another year with a better coaching staff. I think a D'Anton Lynn who's maybe proven to be a bit of a better talent developer, but also I think having that like number two safety or even number one if it so happens that Kalen Bullock's not back, you have a position group that again was so weak, so limited. It felt like at times last year, and now you kind of have a guy who's very capable of just coming in, plug and play, and being ready to rock and roll. And you pair that with one of the additions they got last year with Nicholson. I mean, you're looking at a pretty good a secondary that I think has more tools or the tools to be a lot better, especially under really good tutelage from Dan Lynn. And again, if that improves, who knows? It's like I still think I know you're probably losing Caleb Williams at USC, but just given what Lincoln Riley's done in his past at that position and whether they get Will Howard probably or whether they get Will Howard or whether they go with Miller Moss or someone else, I just kind of believe in what Lincoln Riley does on offense. At the end of the day, they just need to fix this defense. I do feel like Dan Lynn's the guy. I think he's brought in now a couple good guys who can hopefully help out and kind of help spearhead that transition, if you will, into a defense that, again, it's just not so porous. It doesn't need to be the best defense in the world, probably, but it just can't be one of the worst. So that's what you're looking for. And at the end of the day for USC, this is kind of going to be an interesting year. All the like USC sheen is gone. And we talked about this a lot with our previous commitment video for Marks and Nicholson. It's time to circle the wagons a little bit. You're only going to have guys who I think want to be at USC. Like the attraction isn't there as much, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because at some point you need to play better as a team. You need guys more bought in. You need to. It can't just be about Caleb Williams being great and him and everybody else kind of thinking they can take it easy a little bit. And Nick Saban's even brought that up. He's like, well, when we had Bryce Young and Will Anderson, maybe some guys felt like they didn't need to be going balls to the wall all the time because, well, they're there to pick up the slack. Without Caleb Williams, there is none of that. I don't know that you have the individual top end talent on this USC team, although you obviously have a lot of really good players. But again, I think that could breed a better culture of team and a better culture of everybody kind of being bought in and working hard and in trying to be the best themselves, because at the end of the day, they're all they have. They don't have that kind of superhero. So that's frankly what I'm looking for. I think Lincoln Riley needs to do a really good job instilling that. And it'll be interesting to see. It's the first time, frankly, he's had much adversity in his coaching career. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think you can come out as a better team with that. And in a place like USC, if you can get it rolling, there are not many programs in the country that can compete with what USC does. So obviously looking forward to the season. Big year for Lincoln Riley, big year for, I think, the confidence of that program. And looking forward to seeing what they do and continue to make some moves in the portal because I'm sure they're not done. So just wanted to thank everyone for listening. I'll cut it off at that, and we'll see you.